Before we start, I need to warn you. This isn't just another true crime story. This is about a system that heard a child scream for help and turned away. In January 2025, workers at a rental property in Detroit made a discovery that would shake an entire city. What they found in that shallow grave wasn't just the body of a little boy. It was evidence of every failed promise, every ignored warning, every time the system looked the other way. This is the story of Zemar King. He was 9 years old, and he told anyone who would listen that his mother was going to kill him. Someone should have listened. January 2025, a team of workers arrived at a rental property on Detroit's west side. The landlord had hired them for a routine cleanup. The previous tenant, a woman named Brandee Pierce, had moved out months earlier, leaving the place abandoned. They were working in the backyard when one of them noticed something strange in the dirt. At first, they thought it was trash, maybe an old doll buried in the soil. But then they saw the toes, what looked like a human foot protruding from a shallow grave. Police were called immediately. Within hours, they unearthed the body of a small child. His hands and feet were bound. He'd been wrapped in fabric and buried like discarded trash in his own backyard. The medical examiner's report was clear: homicide. Cause of death: asphyxiation. His neck had been compressed. He'd been smothered. His name was Zemar King. He was 9 years old, and investigators quickly learned something that made this case infinitely worse. Zemar had been dead for 3 months. Let me take you back to when Zemar was still alive, back to when he was still trying to save himself. According to reports, Zemar King had contact with Michigan's Child Protective Services multiple times, and what he told them should have set off every alarm in the system. Quote, "She chokes me, she beats me, she wants to kill me." Those were Zemar's own words, a 9-year-old boy describing the abuse he endured at the hands of his own mother. Not to a friend, not to a teacher, to the people whose job it is to protect children like him. But here's where the story becomes a nightmare of negligence. Despite these reports, despite a child literally telling the authorities that his life was in danger, Zemar remained in his mother's custody. Why? How does that happen? How does a system designed to save children fail so completely? Investigators are now looking into what went wrong. Why weren't Zemar's pleas taken seriously? Why wasn't he removed from the home? Were there follow-ups? Were there visits? Or did his case simply disappear into a mountain of paperwork? Whatever the answers, one thing is certain. The system had multiple chances to save Zemar King, and every single time, it failed. Brandee Pierce, Zemar's mother, the woman who was supposed to protect him, nurture him, keep him safe. Instead, she became his killer. According to the investigation, Zemar was murdered in October 2024. The exact date is still unclear, but evidence suggests her mother smothered him and compressed his neck until he stopped breathing. Then she bound his small body, wrapped it, and buried it in the backyard like a secret she wanted to forget. And then Brandee Pierce left. She packed up, took her younger child, Zemar's sibling, and moved to Georgia. She tried to start over, to move on, to bury the past as deeply as she'd buried her son. But in January, when Zemar's body was found, authorities tracked her down. She was arrested and extradited back to Michigan. In February 2025, Brandee Pierce was formally arraigned on charges of first-degree premeditated murder, first-degree felony murder, and first-degree child abuse. If convicted, She faces life in prison without parole. But for Zemar, it's too late. Zemar King's story isn't an isolated tragedy. It's part of a pattern, a system overwhelmed, underfunded, and too often indifferent. Every year, hundreds of thousands of children are reported to Child Protective Services, and every year, some of them slip through the cracks. Some of them die waiting for someone to care. But Zemar King didn't just slip through. He pounded on the door. He told them what was happening. He used his words, his voice, the only power a 9-year-old has. And it wasn't enough. The question isn't just, how did this happen? The question is, how many more Zemars are out there right now? How many children are screaming for help while we're not listening? Zemar loved to draw. He loved basketball. He had dreams just like any 9-year-old. But those dreams were suffocated in a rental house in Detroit, buried in a shallow grave and forgotten for 3 months. His mother is now facing justice. But what about the system? What about the caseworkers who read his file? What about the supervisors who signed off? What about the bureaucrats who let him fall through? Zemar begged to be saved. This documentary is his final scream. The question is, are we finally ready to listen?